So today we are going to be diving into a topic, and that is using NVivo software for literature reviews.
hmm
And it got us thinking, how can this tool kind of level up your research game?
Yeah, it's interesting because most people think of NVivo as a tool for analyzing things like interview data, and not necessarily for doing a lit review or diving into research papers, but it can be incredibly powerful for lit reviews, especially as your research questions get more complex and you start to look at different methodologies.
Yeah, and that's what I'm curious about is like how it can help shape a research question, because I think we all know that lit reviews are very important, but you can feel like you're just swimming in information.
Yeah. That's a feeling every researcher knows, I think, and that's where NVivo can come in because it helps you go beyond just summarizing articles and allows you to actually start to analyze the patterns in the research.
Okay.
So you're not just reading what each study says, but you're actually coding for things like the methodologies they used, the gaps that they identified in the research, the theories that they rely on.
So it's like you can see the bigger picture a little bit more. Of
Exactly.
like, okay, what are the strengths and weaknesses of this research? And that's what can help you figure out where your research fits in.
Exactly. And by coding for those key elements, you can start to see, for example, if there's a particular methodology that's been overlooked in the research or if there are conflicting findings that need further exploration.
Mm-hmm.
And that can help you develop a much stronger research question
Right.
that directly addresses those gaps or contradictions in the literature.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, I have to admit, when I think of NVivo, I just think of all these like technical details and things that I don't understand.
hmm
But you're making it sound almost fun.
Well, I don't know. It definitely has a learning curve.
Sure.
The good news is the basic principles are surprisingly intuitive.
Okay.
Um,
So let's get to the practical stuff.
yeah.
So I feel like a lot of research, you're working with PDFs. What is it like using this to manage your PDFs?
Yeah. So think of NVivo as like this super organized note-taking system on steroids,
Okay.
where you can bring all your PDFs into the one platform, you can code them, and then you can ask really specific questions of the data.
Okay.
The ideal scenario is that you're working with PDFs that use OCR or optical character recognition.
Yeah.
And these are searchable and codable PDFs, meaning that NVivo can actually read the text and help you analyze it.
So OCR is a good thing.
OCR is a good thing.
What about those PDFs that are basically just images of text,
Yeah.
which I feel like I run into all the time?
All the time. And they can be a bit trickier, but there's usually a workaround. So you can often convert an image PDF to OCR format using Adobe Acrobat or other software. So it's an extra step, but well worth it because then you can really unlock the power of NVivo's analysis tools.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Now, in the chapter you sent us, you highlighted a couple studies that used NVivo to manage a massive amount of research articles.
Right.
Can you walk us through those?
Yeah, absolutely. So one that really stood out was by Gorbacheva and colleagues, and they were looking at gender and information systems, and they used NVivo to analyze 26 research papers,
Wow.
which is no small feat.
Yeah.
They coded for things like the methodologies, the theories, the limitations,
Yeah.
all those key elements that we spoke about before. And
So they basically like made a searchable database of insights from those papers.
exactly. And because NVivo allows you to add attributes to each of those files, they could do things like compare the outcomes of each of the studies based on the theory that was used or the method that was used. And it allowed them to identify patterns and trends that they just wouldn't have been able to see with traditional note-taking.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's a great example of how NVivo can help you go beyond just summarizing the literature and actually start to analyze it in a systematic way.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And there was another study by Edwards and their team, and they were looking at women's perceptions of menopause, and they were using a podcast as their data source,
Oh, wow.
which is a really creative use of qualitative research.
Yeah.
So they had the 6-step process for analyzing the data familiarization, coding theme development, and so on. And they actually used NVivo to manage all of that from start to finish, and it just highlights the versatility of the software.
That's really interesting. So it's not specific to any research area.
Yeah.
It can kind of be adapted.
That's right.
Okay. Well, that's really cool. But let's be real. Most researchers, they want to be as efficient as possible.
Absolutely.
So what other types of data can you bring into NVivo besides PDFs? I'm thinking websites, social media posts,
Mm-hmm.
all this digital stuff that's out there.
Yeah, you're thinking along the right lines.
Yeah.
So NVivo has this awesome tool called NCapture.
Yeah.
And NCapture can grab web pages, social media content, Basically anything that's online.
Oh, wow.
And it's a game changer for research because so much of what we study now lives online,
I
right?
can imagine.
Yeah. So for example, imagine you're researching university course outlines across Australia.
Okay.
Trying to copy and paste all that information from each university website would be a nightmare,
Yeah.
right?
Very time consuming, and you'd probably make a lot of errors.
Exactly. But with NCapture, you can just grab those web pages with a few clicks, and it even captures the metadata, so things like the URL and the capture bait.
Oh, cool.
So you have all that information organized and ready to analyze within NVivo.
So it's not just like I'm dumping a bunch of web pages into this. I'm
Yeah.
actually capturing it in a way that makes it searchable.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
analyzable.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And speaking of analysis, it's important to remember as well that when it comes to things like interviews and focus groups, detailed transcription is key. You want to capture all those nuances of spoken language. And NVivo can help you manage those transcripts as well.
That makes sense. But now I'm thinking with all these different types of data, PDFs, websites, interview transcripts, how do you keep track of it all?
Yeah.
And how do you make sense of it?
That's where NVivo's superpowers come in.
Okay.
Things like memos, annotations, and links.
Now let's talk about the features that really take it to the next level. And I want to start with memos
Okay.
because they sound simple enough, but I have a feeling there's a lot more to them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Memos are like your personal research journal, but integrated directly into your NVivo project.
Okay.
So it allows you to capture those light bulb moments, those critical reflections, those methodological challenges that inevitably arise when you're deep in research. It's like having a conversation with yourself, but a super organized and searchable conversation.
So it's not just about jotting down quick notes.
Yeah.
It's about actually having a space for in-depth reflection
Exactly.
that's connected to different parts of your research.
Yeah, and it's not just about your own thoughts either.
Okay.
You can use memos to summarize key points from an interview or to capture methodological insights. You can even track your search terms so you can easily update your lit review later on.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It's like having this audit trail for your entire research process.
I love that. It's like a safety net for your brain,
Exactly.
so you don't lose those valuable insights
That's right.
or forget why you did certain things.
And speaking of not losing things,
Yes.
let's talk about annotations.
Okay.
So these are like little footnotes that you can add directly to your files.
Okay.
So think of it as like a way to have a conversation with the text itself.
So if I'm reading an article and I come across a passage that sparks an idea or raises a question, I can just annotate right there in the document.
Exactly. You can use annotations to clarify terms, bookmark important passages, even highlight potential biases or assumptions you're noticing in the text.
Okay.
It's all about adding that extra layer of critical engagement.
I like that.
Yeah.
Because now I'm seeing how all of these features work together
Yeah.
to create like a really rich and layered understanding of the research.
Yeah.
It's not just about reading. It's about really actively engaging with it.
Precisely. And that's where, see, also links come in. So these are like bridges between different parts of your research, and they help you create a web of connections.
Okay.
So let's say you're analyzing an interview transcript, and the interviewee mentions a specific company policy.
Okay.
You could create a see also link from their quote to the actual text of the policy document.
So you can just seamlessly jump back and forth between those two things.
Exactly, without having to dig through mountains of files.
That would save so much time.
Absolutely. And it's not just about connecting quotes to documents. You can use see also links to connect emerging themes, to highlight contrasting viewpoints, or even to track those outlier quotes
Okay.
that challenge your assumptions.
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, so these superpowers are really starting to impress me.
Good.
But I have to ask, what about the so what of all this data?
Yeah.
We've talked about gathering information, organizing it, reflecting on it, but how does it actually help us make sense of it all
Right.
and answer those burning research questions?
Yeah, that's where the real magic happens, and it all comes down to coding and queries.
Okay, so coding, I know it's about assigning labels to chunks of data, but I always struggle with how that actually works in practice.
Yeah.
Can you kind of break that down for me?
Absolutely. So think of it this way. Highlighting is passive coding is active.
Okay.
When you code, you're not just marking the text. You're assigning meaning to it.
Okay.
You're saying this segment of data represents this concept or idea.
Got it.
It's like you're tagging each piece of information with its core essence.
So it's not just about labeling, it's about creating a system for categorizing it.
Exactly.
Right.
And as you code, you're inevitably going to start to see those patterns emerge.
Yeah.
You might notice that certain ideas keep popping up, or that different groups of people are talking about the same topic in distinct ways. NVivo allows you to build those codes into hierarchies like branches on a tree,
Okay.
revealing the relationships between the ideas and creating a conceptual framework for your research.
So we're going beyond just simple labels. We're actually building a structure.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
But how do queries then fit into this? Because I've heard that word thrown around.
Yeah.
I don't really know what that means in terms of NVivo.
So queries are like your analysis detectives.
Okay.
Once you've coded your data, queries help you ask specific questions about it
Okay.
and uncover those hidden connections.
Right.
So, for example, you might want to see all the data coded under a specific theme, or you might want to compare how different groups of people talked about a particular concept.
So if I'm researching how people perceive a new technology, I could use queries to compare the responses of early adopters versus those who are more hesitant.
Precisely. And there are all sorts of queries you can run in Vivo. Word frequency queries can show you patterns in language. Use matrix coding queries can reveal associations between different concepts, and so much more. It's like having the superpower for seeing through the noise and uncovering the hidden stories within your data.
Yeah, it's starting to sound like this is like the ultimate research sidekick.
I think so.
But before we get too carried away,
Yeah.
with all these features, let's kind of bring it back to our listener's original question,
Okay.
which was about using it for lit reviews.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some key takeaways that they should be thinking about as they embark on this?
Yeah. First and foremost, NVivo can be a game changer for managing and analyzing literature, especially as the volume and complexity of research grows.
Okay.
It's not just about organizing files, it's about actively engaging with the material, making connections, and uncovering those aha moments that lead to breakthrough insights.
It's like having a research assistant built into your computer,
Exactly.
but one that never sleeps or complains.
That's right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But seriously, this sounds really powerful,
Yeah.
especially for someone who feels overwhelmed by all the information out there.
Absolutely. And remember, even if you're not using NVivo specifically, the principles we've discussed are universally applicable. So think about how you can code your notes, how you can build hierarchies of ideas, how you can ask probing questions to uncover patterns in any information you're working with.
That's a good point.
It's all about being an intentional and insightful learner, regardless of the tools that you're using.
It's not just about the software.
No.
It's about developing those critical thinking skills.
Exactly. So we've been talking all about NVivo and how it can really transform your research.
Yep.
We talked about gathering the information, organizing it, reflecting on it. But now it's time to put all the pieces together
Yeah.
and figure out, how do we unlock these hidden patterns?
Yeah.
And how do we answer those burning research questions?
Absolutely. It's like we've gathered all the clues and now we're ready to solve the mystery.
Oh, okay, I like it. And our main tools for doing that are coding and queries.
Okay, so coding, remind me again how this actually works in practice.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to get lost in the abstract idea of it.
Right.
But I'm a hands-on learner. Give me an example.
Okay, so let's say you're reviewing literature on climate change.
Okay.
You might create codes like causes of climate change, impact on ecosystems, mitigation strategies, and so on.
Okay.
As you read each article, you code relevant passages with these labels.
Got it.
It's like you're tagging each piece of information with its core idea, creating a structured system for categorizing your data.
That makes sense. But I also imagine myself ending up with a million codes.
Right.
And not really knowing how they all fit together.
Yeah, and that's where hierarchies come in. So instead of just having a flat list of codes, you can create this structured system with main codes and subcodes.
Okay.
Think of it like a family tree with branches and sub-branches. So you might have a main code for climate change impacts, and then subcodes for impacts on human health, impacts on biodiversity, impacts on coastal communities, and so on.
So you're not just labeling, but you're organizing the labels.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
In a way that reveals the connections.
Yeah.
And you see the bigger picture.
Exactly. It's like you're creating this mental map of the research landscape.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like it.
And once you have this beautifully coded data,
Yes.
then you can unleash the power of queries.
Okay.
This is where you get to ask those probing questions and really start digging into the patterns.
All right, time to put on our detective hats. Give me a real-world example
Okay.
of how these queries help us uncover the hidden insights.
Okay, so imagine you're researching the discourse around artificial intelligence, which is obviously generating a lot of buzz these days. You've coded articles and social media posts for different perspectives, optimistic views, concerns about job displacement, ethical considerations, and so on. Now, you could run a word frequency query on each of those codes.
So you would see which words are most commonly used within each of those perspectives.
Exactly, and that can be really fascinating.
Yeah.
Because it allows you to analyze the language itself.
Okay.
So you might find that the optimistic articles frequently use words like innovation and progress, while the articles focused on job displacement use words like automation and unemployment.
Okay.
So these patterns can reveal a lot about how different groups frame the issue.
It's like you're not just reading the words, but you're understanding like the underlying sentiment,
Right.
the subtle ways that language shapes our perception.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
And then there's another powerful query type called matrix coding. So let's stick with our artificial intelligence example. You could create a matrix query that compares the different perspectives on AI with the source type. Are they academic journals? Are they news articles? Are they blog posts?
So you can see, are certain viewpoints more prevalent
Exactly.
in different types of publications?
You might discover that academic journals tend to focus more on the ethical considerations, while news articles highlight the economic implications.
Okay.
And these insights can be incredibly valuable for understanding how an issue is being framed and debated in different spheres.
That makes a lot of sense.
All right.
All right. Well, I'm convinced
Good.
NVivo is a game changer for anyone who's serious about research.
I think so.
Whether you're an academic or just starting out.
Yeah.
It's more than just organizing information.
Mm-hmm.
It's about thinking critically,
Right.
making connections, and uncovering those hidden patterns
Absolutely.
that can lead to new discoveries.
And the best part is that even if you don't use NVivo specifically, the principles that we've discussed can be applied to any research project.
That's a good point.
So think about how you can code your notes, build hierarchies of ideas, ask probing questions. These are skills that will serve you well no matter what tools you're using.
It's about being an active and engaged learner.
Exactly.
Okay, before we wrap up, I have one final thought for our listener.
Okay.
You know, we've talked about using this for academic research.
Yeah.
But I can see how these techniques would be really valuable in other areas of life as well.
Absolutely.
Like imagine using this to organize your reading list.
Yeah.
Or analyze customer feedback for your business.
Yeah.
Or even make sense of like a complex legal document.
I love that it's a reminder that these tools and techniques aren't just for academics. They can empower anyone who wants to make sense of complex information and unlock new insights. It's all about becoming a more intentional and insightful learner, and that's something we can all benefit from.
Absolutely, and that's what the deep dive is all about.
So thanks for joining us on this incredible journey, and we would love to hear your thoughts on this episode and any other research rabbit holes you'd like us to explore. Until next time.